Maya stood in the middle of the bedroom, looking down at the open suitcase she had already packed with everything necessary for her 3-day business trip. A gray business suit, a spare ivory blouse, a folder with documents, and a cosmetic bag with a minimal set of essentials. Everything lay neatly, as befitted a person accustomed to order and planning every little detail. She was 33 and over the years she had learned to organize her time to manage working as a senior accountant at a major company, taking care of her daughter and maintaining her home in pristine condition without asking anyone for help. Derek sat on the edge of the bed, scrolling through something on his phone. His face looked focused. His brows were slightly furrowed, his lips pressed together. But Maya had long learned to distinguish the shades of his mood by the smallest details. Right now he was tense, though he diligently hid it behind a mask of calm. Maya's husband looked younger than his 37 years. An athletic build, well-groomed dark hair with a touch of gray at the temples, and an expensive Swiss watch on his wrist that he had bought last year with his bonus. He always paid attention to his appearance, considering it an important part of his career in middle management, and sometimes spent more on clothes and accessories than he should have. "Did you check everything?" he asked without looking up from the screen. His fingers glided quickly across the sensor. "Yes, everything is ready," Maya answered, zipping up the suitcase and checking the locks. "Tickets are on the app, documents in the folder. The assignment is signed by the boss. I'll be back the day after tomorrow around 9 o'clock in the evening, if the train isn't delayed." Derek finally raised his head and looked at his wife. Something elusive flashed in his gaze, as if he wanted to say something, but changed his mind at the last moment, swallowing the words. Then he stood up, squared his shoulders, walked over to her with a measured step, and hugged her by the shoulders. The hug was formal, almost mechanical, without real warmth. "You're doing great. You'll handle it perfectly as always," he said in an even voice devoid of any lively intonation. "I know I can rely on you. You are the most responsible person I know." Maya nodded, but something pricked inside her, like a thin needle piercing her heart. These words sounded right, even beautiful, but there was no sincerity in them. They sounded like a memorized phrase from a corporate training session, spoken automatically without thinking about the meaning. She pulled away and looked closely into her husband's face, trying to understand what was hiding behind it. Derek was smiling, but the smile was somewhat fake, as if he was thinking about something else entirely. "Zoe will be at Mom's," Maya clarified, although she knew the answer perfectly well. She just wanted to hear confirmation. "Of course Mama Louise will handle it. Everything is under control. You don't need to worry," Derek replied and immediately turned away, burying his face in his phone again. Maya sighed heavily, feeling that familiar bitterness rising inside. 6-year-old Zoe was her daughter from her first marriage, and Derek had never hidden his indifference toward the girl. He hadn't adopted her, didn't participate in raising her, and even spoke to the child rarely and reluctantly, answering questions in monosyllables, and avoiding any close contact. Maya had resigned herself to this state of affairs long ago. She had chosen this man 3 years ago, knowing he wasn't ready to accept another man's child as his own. But still, every time it concerned Zoe, when her husband demonstrated his indifference or ignored the girl, an aching pain rose in her soul that was impossible to get rid of. "Okay, I'll call Mom from the train when I get there," she said and picked up her brown leather bag from the table, checking if her ID was there. Derek was already getting dressed in the hallway to drive his wife to the station. Maya put on a sand-cold autumn jacket, adjusted the collar, grabbed the suitcase handle, and turned to face her husband. He stood with his hands in the pockets of his jeans, looking at her with that same strange smile. Too wide, too tense, unnatural. "Well, ready to roll?" he asked. Maya nodded. They left the apartment and walked out into the courtyard where Derek's car was waiting. A gray 15-year-old sedan that was his faithful companion, even though it broke down often. They got in the car and headed to the train station. The drive took 30 minutes. At the station, her husband pulled Maya's suitcase out of the trunk, and they walked toward the platform together. At the entrance, they ran into Ms. Ida Robinson, the cleaning lady from their apartment complex. The woman was 74, but she was still working, maintaining cleanliness in their building for a small fee from the residents and working at the station where she traveled a few times a week to mop floors and wipe tables in the cafeteria. Ms. Ida saw Maya with the suitcase. Heading on a business trip, child? She asked warmly, looking at her with attentive eyes from under a faded headscarf. Yes, for 3 days, Mia answered, stopping. Going to the next city for work. Miss Ada looked at her closely, as if trying to read something in her expression, and nodded slowly. Safe travels, honey. Take care of yourself there and be careful, she added quietly, glancing at Mia's husband. But Mia didn't attach any importance to these words. She thanked her, said goodbye, and walked on. Mia took out her phone and texted her mother. I'm at the station. We'll call tonight. Kiss Zoe for me tight. Mama Louise replied almost immediately, quick and caring as always. Hey baby. We are doing great. Eating breakfast right now. She's having grits. Safe travels. Take care. Her mother had always been a reliable support in Maya's life. After the divorce from her first husband when Zoe was just 2 years old, it was she who helped her daughter raise the child, supported her morally in difficult moments, and even financially when there wasn't enough money for necessities. Louise was 60. She had worked as a librarian at the public library her whole life and lived in a small one-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of the city in an older building. But for Zoe there was always room on the pull-out couch, time for games and reading fairy tales, and endless grandmotherly affection, which the girl lacked at home. The station greeted them with the usual noise and bustle. Maya and Derek walked through the automatic doors into the building. Inside it smelled of coffee, pastries from the kiosk, and that specific station smell, a mixture of dust, human sweat, and machine oil. They showed their tickets to the agent. Maya bought a bottle of still water at a kiosk, and they headed toward the platform through a long corridor with advertising posters on the walls. Her train was already standing at the platform, long silver with blue horizontal stripes along the cars and the Amtrak logo on the side. She looked at the mobile ticket, checking the info. Car number 8, seat 32. Well, have a good trip, Derek said, and added with some inappropriate, almost theatrical cheerfulness. Don't worry about anything. Everything will be in perfect order here. I have everything under control. Just focus on work. Maya froze on the platform, feeling a chill run down her spine. Something in that phrase alerted her, made her tense up internally. Derek wasn't usually so talkative before her departures. Usually he nodded, kissed her on the cheek formally, almost like a brother, and went back home or to work. But now, he seemed to be trying to convince her of something, although she hadn't asked anything or expressed any doubts. Why does he need to do that? Okay, she said slowly, peering into his face. See you, Derek. Derek quickly walked away, and Maya began to slowly count the cars walking along the train on the concrete platform. There were many people at the station as always in the morning hour. Someone was saying goodbye to relatives, hugging and kissing before separation. Someone was hurriedly loading heavy bags and backpacks into the vestibules of the cars. Someone stood aside smoking a last cigarette before the long journey, exhaling smoke into the cool air. Maya reached her car, number 8, climbed the steps, and had already lifted her foot onto the vestibule, heading inside, when suddenly she felt someone grabbed her by the arm firmly, persistently, almost painfully. She turned sharply, losing her balance, and saw Miss Ida. The woman stood before her on the platform, breathing heavily with a frightened, almost twisted face. She was wearing a blue work uniform with a yellow patch that read station staff on the chest. In one hand was a metal bucket. In the other a long mop. Stop, Miss Ida said sharply and loudly so that several people turned around. Don't get on the car. Do you hear me? Don't get on. Maya was taken aback, feeling everything inside churn with misunderstanding. Miss Ada, what are you doing here? What happened? Why are you stopping me? The elderly woman quickly looked around as if checking to see if anyone was watching them or listening and pulled Maya closer to her, lowering her voice to a whisper. Come with me quickly. I'll show you something. It's very important, child. Very, believe me, she whispered urgently, squeezing her wrist with cold fingers. Don't ask questions. Just come. Maya was confused, not knowing what to do. What was happening? Why was the cleaning lady from their building, whom she only knew in passing, grabbing her at the station and demanding she go somewhere? It seemed absurd, illogical, even frightening. Maybe she wasn't all there. Maybe she had mental issues. But Miss Ida's face was absolutely serious, composed, almost stern. In her eyes there was no joke, no madness, no senile clouding. Only firm determination and some kind of anxiety. "Miss Ida, my train leaves in 15 minutes. Maya began, trying to free her hand, but the woman held tight. "The train can wait. There will be another one in 2 hours. But what I show you won't wait. This concerns you personally, your life. Let's go quickly before it's too late," insisted. And there was such conviction in her voice that Maya suddenly took it seriously. The woman pulled Maya by the hand, and obeying some inner impulse, an intuition that suggested she should listen, Maya followed, stepping down from the car stairs back onto the platform. They walked along the platform, past several cars, skirted a group of smoking men, and turned toward the main station building through a side entrance. "Where are we going?" asked Ma, feeling anxiety growing inside, cold and sticky. "To the cafeteria where your husband is," Miss Ada answered briefly, not stopping or looking back. Maya stopped dead in her tracks. "What? What husband?" "My Derek. He went home after seeing me off." "You're mistaken." "No, honey." Miss Ida shook her head, turning to her. "He didn't go home. He came here into the station. I saw him with my own eyes. He met with some woman. They are sitting in the cafe talking about something very important." "How do you know? Were you following him?" Maya asked mistrustfully, still not believing what was happening. Miss Ada turned to her and looked straight into her eyes long, seriously, without a shadow of doubt. "I work here in this cafeteria mornings and evenings. I mop floors, clear tables, wipe counters. And just now he walked in, sat at the far table. 5 minutes later, a young woman walked up to him. They are sitting there right now talking. I heard what they are talking about and you need to hear it too immediately." There was not a drop of uncertainty in the woman's voice. Maya's heart beat faster. The beats reverberated in her temples. She didn't understand what was happening. But her intuition, that same female intuition that had never failed her, suggested this was something serious, very serious, maybe even catastrophic. "Okay," she exhaled, feeling her mouth go dry. "Show me." They entered the station building through the side entrance and walked through the spacious waiting hall with plastic seats where tired passengers sat. The cafeteria was in the far corner of the hall, a small space with a dozen round tables, a long counter with a display case, and the smell of freshly brewed coffee mixed with the aroma of pastries. There were quite a few people. Some were having breakfast before the road, hurriedly swallowing sandwiches and washing them down with coffee from paper cups. Some were just killing time before departure, sipping soda. Ms. Ida stopped at the entrance, holding the door, and nodded toward the far corner of the room. "Over there. See behind that table by the window." Maya looked closely and froze, feeling the ground slip from under her feet. At the far table by the fogged-up window sat Derek. She recognized him immediately. The same watch, the same jacket, the same posture. Opposite him sat a young woman of about 30 with long dark hair tied in a ponytail and red tear-stained eyes. She had clearly been crying just recently. Her face was swollen, a crumpled napkin in her hand. Maya looked closer and recognized her. It was Tasha, Derek's younger sister. What was Tasha doing here at the station? Why was she crying? And most importantly, why was Derek meeting her secretly when he was supposed to have gone home when he told his wife everything was under control? Ms. Ida said quietly, almost in a whisper, "Now I'll take my mop and bucket. Go closer to them. Pretend I'm mopping the floor near their table. Nobody pays attention to a cleaning lady. And you stand here by the entrance and wait. You'll understand everything. Everything will fall into place." Maya nodded silently, unable to utter a word. Her throat was tight. The older woman picked up the gray metal bucket with soapy water and the long mop and slowly, leisurely headed across the hall to the table where Derek and Tasha were sitting. Maya remained standing by the entrance, hiding behind a wide pillar so her husband wouldn't notice her. What was happening? Why was her husband lying to her face? What was he hiding? What secret? And what did Tasha and her tears have to do with it? After a few minutes that seemed like an eternity, Mrs. Ida returned. Her face was grim, her lips tightly pressed. She took Maya by the elbow with a firm hand and led her aside to an empty table by a large window overlooking the station square. "Sit down," she ordered quietly but firmly. "I recorded their conversation on my phone. Now I'll let you listen." Brace yourself. Record it. Maya repeated like an echo, sinking onto the chair. How? Why? Miss Ida took a phone with a worn case out of the deep pocket of her blue uniform and slowly poked at the screen with a knobby finger. I've been doing this for a long time when I work here. When I hear something important, something alarming, you never know what happens in life. People say things they deny later. Here, listen carefully. She found the file, pressed play on the audio recording, and held it to Maya's ear. From the small speaker came voices, at first indistinct, muffled, then clearer and more distinct. A woman's voice breaking into sobs, trembling with fear. Darnell ruined everything. You understand? Everything. $75,000 in debts. 75. I was already cornered near the house once. 2 men. They said if we don't return the money, it will be bad. Derek, if you don't take out a loan, they'll tear us apart. Do you understand what that means? They aren't joking. These are serious people. Derek's voice quiet, tense but firm. I'll do everything. Tasha, calm down. Maya left on a business trip and will get everything processed now. A loan secured by her condo is the only way out of the situation. There is no other option. She won't find out anything. The main thing is time. We have to get everything done before she returns. We have 3 days. Tasha sobbing with hope. But her consent, you can't put a lien on it without her. It's illegal. Derek with irritation and impatience. Mr. Finch said we can process a power of attorney without her. He'll forge the signature. He has all the samples of her signature. I gave him copies of the documents. Everything will be filed cleanly. No one will prove anything later, even if she suspects something. The recording cut off sharply. Maya sat motionless, clutching Ms. Ida's phone. The world around her ceased to exist. There was no more cafeteria, station people noise. She heard only those words echoing in her head, tearing her consciousness apart. Loan secured by her condo. Forge the signature. She won't find out anything. 3 days. Miss Ada put her wrinkled, warm hand on her shoulder. Now do you understand, child, why I stopped you? Why I didn't let you get on that train? Maya slowly, as if through a fog, raised her eyes to Miss Ada. Tears stood in them, but she wasn't crying. Inside her rose a cold, icy rage, so strong and all-consuming that it blocked out everything else. Pain, resentment, fear, confusion. Yes, she whispered. Now I understand everything. Maya couldn't tear her gaze away from the phone lying on the table. The recording had ended, but the words continued to sound in her head like a broken record. She mechanically ran her hands through her hair, trying to gather her thoughts. Miss Ida sat opposite and silently watched her, giving her time to come to her senses. Did you really only see this today? Or was there something earlier? Maya finally asked, and her voice sounded strange, hollow and detached, as if it belonged to someone else. Yesterday I heard something too, Miss Ada replied, sighing heavily. I was mopping the floor in your building on the 3rd floor. It was around 8 o'clock in the evening. Your husband was standing in the hallway talking on the phone. Obviously thought no one was nearby. He spoke quietly, but I heard everything. He told someone, tomorrow she leaves and will have 3 days. Finch will prepare everything. The condo is premarital, but that doesn't matter. We'll backdate everything. Meet tomorrow at the station in the cafeteria. I didn't fully understand what it was about then, but something inside told me. This is dirty business. Very dirty. Maya froze. So Derek had planned this in advance. He hadn't made the decision this morning. He hadn't agreed to help under pressure from his sister just now. He had been thinking it over, preparing, waiting for the right moment. And that moment was supposed to be her business trip, 3 days when she would be far away in another city, unavailable for calls and meetings. I came to the station early today on purpose, Miss Etta continued, lowering her voice. I wanted to see with my own eyes what he was plotting. I've been working here for 15 years. I know every corner, every employee. First I saw you with your husband. Then I sat in the cafeteria, took the mop, pretended I was starting the morning cleaning. And I really saw him first. He came in, sat at the far table by the window, ordered coffee. About 5 minutes later, this woman appeared, young, in tears. She was crying at the entrance, wiping her eyes with a handkerchief. I understood immediately. There's going to be an important conversation. Serious. I mopped the floor nearby for 3 minutes, no less. That was enough to hear the most important part. They didn't even notice me. But who pays attention to a cleaner with a mop? I'm just part of the interior to them furniture. A bitter smirk sounded in Miss Ida's voice. Then I went out to the platform to check the restrooms and saw you. You were walking to your car with the suitcase, and I realized if you get on the train and leave, it will all be over. They'll process the documents, mortgage your apartment for a loan, and you'll come back the day after tomorrow and find out you're left without a roof over your head, or that a huge debt hangs on you that you didn't take. Maya closed her eyes, trying to cope with the emotions threatening to overwhelm her. Anger mixed with gratitude, resentment with cold calculation. She had to think clearly, keep herself together. Now was not the time for tears, hysterics, and weakness. Thank you, Miss Etta. Thank you so much, she said quietly but firmly, opening her eyes and looking at the woman. If not for you, I would have lost everything. Absolutely everything. Miss Ida waved her wrinkled hand. Don't mention it, honey. I just couldn't stay silent. My conscience wouldn't let me sleep peacefully at night. Now think about what to do next. Time doesn't wait. They are sitting there planning this very minute how to rob you blind. Maya straightened up on the chair and forced herself to think logically, casting aside panic. The condo was indeed premarital property. She had bought it even before meeting Derek with money received from the sale of housing inherited from her first husband's parents, plus her own savings from several years of work. By law, it was her personal property, and her husband had absolutely no rights to it. But if he planned to forge documents, process a lien through a shell lawyer named Finch, then formally everything could look legal, at least at first glance on paper. Proving later that the signature was forged would have to be done through court, through long expert examinations, and that meant time, big money, nerves, and no guarantees. I need to photograph them, Maya said decisively, taking her phone out of her bag, and record a video if they say anything else important. The more evidence I collect, the better for me. You're thinking right, smart girl. Ida nodded approvingly. Let's do this. I'll go closer to them again, and you stand here by the pillar and film everything on your phone. Just be careful so they don't notice. If you get busted, it's all for nothing. Maya took out her smartphone, turned on the camera, and checked if there was enough battery charge. Her hands were still trembling traitorously, but she forced herself to bring her emotions under strict control. Miss Ada got up from the chair, smoothed her uniform, picked up the mop and bucket again, and slowly, waddling as elderly people with sore legs walk, headed across the hall back to the far table. Maya hid behind a wide concrete pillar so Derek wouldn't accidentally see her, and aimed the camera lens at her husband. Through the smartphone screen she saw Derek in close-up detail. He was sitting half-turned to her, and his face was tense, his jaw clenched, lips pressed into a thin line. Tasha was saying something to him, heatedly, waving her hands, and by her desperate gestures, it was clear she was on the verge of a nervous breakdown. Maya took several clear photos. Derek's face separately, Tasha in profile separately, then a wide shot of the table with their figures. Then she switched the phone to video mode and pressed the red record button. Mrs. stopped about 6 feet from their table right in the aisle between the rows and busily began mopping the floor with long strokes, and at the same time audio recording was running near the table. Tasha, through sobs and convulsive breaths, lamented. Darnell said we only have a week, maximum a week. Then they'll come for the money and it will be too late to do anything. What should I do? Derek, we have nothing. We even sold the car a month ago to cover the interest on one loan. We live in a rented apartment. Nothing to pay with. Soon they'll kick us out on the street. Derek spoke with restraint but irritation. Stop crying. Pull yourself together. I told you it will be resolved. Tonight I'm meeting with Finch and the lender. He processes loans secured by real estate. They have people everywhere. They'll prepare everything. Documents, contracts, powers of attorney. Tomorrow morning we submit the application to the bank. The day after tomorrow we get the money. $75,000 will be enough to close all of Darnell's debts. Tasha wiped her nose with a napkin. It'll be enough. There will even be a little left. Derek, you are saving our family, saving us from creditors. They are serious people, loan sharks. They promised if we don't return the money, they'll maim Darnell or me. I'm scared. Very scared. Derek spoke coldly. Don't be afraid of anything. The main thing is that Maya doesn't find out ahead of time. When she returns, the documents will already be processed, the money transferred. She'll throw a fit, of course, but what will she do? Nothing. The condo will be under a lien. You can't get it back without paying off the loan. We'll pay it off with her money. I'll force her. Miss Ada continued recording the sound. Every word of Derek's was captured. At that moment, a man of about 45 in a strict gray suit and glasses approached Derek and Tasha's table. He carried a leather briefcase and looked like a typical lawyer or notary. Maya recognized him. Mr. Finch, an acquaintance of Derek's who handled paperwork. They had seen each other a couple of times at some gatherings. Finch sat at the table, opened the briefcase, and took out a folder with papers. "Everything is ready," he said in a business tone. "Power of attorney in the name of Derek Lell. Authorizing disposal of the apartment. Mortgage agreement. Owner's consent. I'll put Maya's signature tonight. I have good samples. Tomorrow morning we submit to the bank. The day after tomorrow the money is in the account. The appraiser already prepared the valuation of the apartment, $450,000 market value. The bank will give 60% against the collateral. Is that enough for you?" Derek nodded. "More than enough, Tasha. Do you hear? Everything is going according to plan." Tasha sobbed gratefully. "Thank you, Mr. Finch. Thank you, Derek. You are saving us." Finch smirked. "Saving comes with a corresponding fee. $5,000 is what my work costs. Don't forget to hand it over later." Maya continued filming, capturing every face, every gesture while Ms. Ada recorded the sound. Finch laid out documents on the table, showed Derek some clauses, ran his finger along the lines. Everything looked mundane, ordinary. A regular business meeting in a cafe. None of the customers paid attention to them. Yet right here Maya's fate, her home, her future, her child's future were being decided. Ms. Ida finished mopping the floor near their table and slowly moved back. Maya turned off the video recording and hid the phone in her pocket. Missa approached her, put the bucket on the floor, and sank heavily onto a chair. "Well, did you see?" she asked quietly. "Yes," answered Maya briefly. "Recorded everything. Now I have proof of their conspiracy." "And now listen," said Miss EA, and handed her phone to Maya. Mia listened to the audio recording and looked silently at the elderly woman. "So what are you going to do?" Mia looked toward the table where Derek, Tasha, and Finch continued discussing the details of the scam. Inside her there was no more pain or resentment, only cold determination. "I'm not going anywhere today," she said firmly. "I'll call my boss, cancel the trip, say I got sick or something urgent happened. I'll go home and do everything to protect my apartment, and then I'll deal with my husband once and for all. And now let me transfer the audio files to my phone." Miss Ada nodded approvingly, handing over her phone. "That's right, child. Don't let them hurt you. You're young, strong. You have a child. You can't let people like that break your life. Thank you again, Miss Ada." Maya stood up from the table and hugged the woman tightly. "Without you, I would have lost everything. I will never forget this. Here, take this, please." Maya handed the elderly woman $100 for your kindness. "No need, honey. I did it from a pure heart. I am also doing this from a pure heart. I want to." Meta nodded and reluctantly put the bill in her pocket. "Go, honey. Time is short. Act fast." Miss Ada squeezed her hand in response. Maya nodded, grabbed her suitcase, which had been standing nearby the whole time, and quickly walked out of the cafeteria. She walked through the waiting hall without looking back, stepped out onto the station square, and stopped, taking out her phone. First thing was to call her boss and explain the situation, then find a lawyer who could help protect the apartment and definitely warn the authorities about the possible forgery of documents. She dialed her manager's number. After the third ring, he picked up. "Hello, Peter. This is Maya. I need to cancel the trip urgently. Have serious personal circumstances." Her voice sounded calm and confident, though everything inside was boiling. The boss grumbled displeasedly about the bad timing and inconvenience, but eventually agreed to reschedule the meeting for next week. Maya thanked him and hung up. Then she caught a taxi and gave the address of a local legal aid clinic. There she would get initial recommendations on how to proceed. Getting into the car, she looked back at the station building one last time. Somewhere in there in the cafeteria sat the person who an hour ago was her husband and now had become an enemy, a traitor. And she wasn't going to forgive him for this ever. The taxi drove through the city, weaving between cars while Maya sat in the back seat, feverishly thinking over the situation. She had the recordings on her phone, both audio from Ms. Ada and her own video. But was it enough? Would there be enough evidence to stop Derek? She opened an internet browser and started searching for information on how to protect premarital assets from illegal actions by a spouse. Article after article popped up on the screen. Maya read quickly, snatching the main points. Premarital apartment belongs only to her by law. Without her notarized consent, no one can mortgage this property. Forgery of a signature is a felony. Real estate fraud. All these are serious crimes for which one can get real prison time. She called her mother. Louise answered after the second ring. "Baby, are you already on the train?" Her calm voice was heard. "No, Mom. I didn't go. I have problems. Serious ones." Maya tried to speak evenly so as not to scare her mother ahead of time. "What happened, baby?" Anxiety immediately appeared in Louis's voice. "Derek wanted to mortgage my apartment without my knowledge to pay off his sister and her husband's debts. $75,000. I found out by accident." Maya briefly recounted everything that happened at the station. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then her mother exhaled quietly. "I always felt there was something wrong with that man, but I thought you were happy and kept quiet. Maya, come to me. You and Zoe stay here until we sort it out." "No, Mom. I'm going home. First to a lawyer, then to file a fraud alert, then home. I need to protect the apartment legally. Let Zoe stay with you for another day or two while I settle the situation." Maya was adamant. "Okay, but be careful and call me every hour. I need to know you're all right." Her mother spoke firmly, and Mia felt gratitude for this support. They said goodbye. The taxi stopped near a low building of the legal consultation office. Maya paid the driver, took her suitcase, and went inside. Several people were sitting in the waiting room, expecting their turn. She approached the receptionist, a middle-aged woman in a strict suit. "Hello. I need an urgent consultation on family and housing law." "It's very important," said Maya. The receptionist looked at the computer. "We have an opening in half an hour. Attorney Mrs. Ross, can you wait?" "Yes, of course." Maya sat on a stiff couch in the waiting room and took out her phone. She rewatched the video she shot in the cafeteria. The quality was acceptable. Faces recognizable. She emailed all files to herself and backed them up to cloud storage. Couldn't risk it. If the phone got lost or broken, the evidence had to remain. Half an hour dragged on excruciatingly long. Maya sat looking out the window at the street where ordinary life flowed. People went about their business, not suspecting that someone nearby had their whole world collapsing. Finally, the receptionist called her. Mrs. Ross turned out to be a woman in her 50s with a piercing gaze and blonde hair in a short, stylish cut. She listened to Maya carefully, not interrupting, making notes on a legal pad. When the story ended, the lawyer asked to see all the recordings. Maya turned on first Miss Eda's audio, then her video. Mrs. Ross listened and watched with concentration, sometimes nodding. When it ended, she put her pen on the table. "Well, they are taking a serious risk. Breaking the law. You have direct evidence of intent to commit a crime. These recordings are a weighty argument, especially the testimony of the lawyer Finch about forging the signature." Mrs. Ross began. "Now you need to act quickly and clearly. First, immediately go to the county recorder of deeds or a notary and file a fraud alert and an affidavit preventing any actions with your apartment without your personal presence. This will flag the title." Maya nodded, typing into her phone. "Second, file a police report about the preparation of a crime, fraud, and forgery of documents. Attach copies of the recordings. Let them conduct a check. Call all participants for questioning," the lawyer continued. "Third, contact the bank where Derek plans to process the loan if you know which one, or put a freeze on your credit and title. Banks take such things very seriously because they can suffer themselves. They will block any operations with your real estate. And divorce? How quickly can I finalize it?" asked Maya. "With mutual consent, about a month or two. If Derek resists, the process will drag out, but given the circumstances, the court will take your side. You have a child from a first marriage. The apartment is premarital. No joint property judging by everything. Mrs. Ross spoke confidently. The main thing now is to protect the apartment and document the criminal actions of your spouse. This will give you a huge advantage in the divorce proceedings. Maya felt relief. A clear plan of action appeared. Thank you so much. How much do I owe you for the consultation? She asked, taking out her wallet. $200. If you need representation in court, contact me. I'll take your case. Mrs. Ross handed her a business card. Maya paid her again and left the office. Next destination, notary recorder's office. She found the nearest office 2 blocks away and walked there quickly, dragging her suitcase on wheels behind her. The notary accepted her immediately upon learning of the urgency. Hearing the explanation, she frowned. That is outrageous. Unfortunately, such cases happen. Husbands try to dispose of wives' property without their knowledge. We will draw up an affidavit immediately and enter a prohibition in the system. After this, no reputable notary or bank will certify a deal with your apartment without your presence and ID. The procedure took 20 minutes. My ass signed the affidavit. The notary stamped it and immediately sent the information to the registry. Done. They face serious prison time, said the detective sternly. Maya nodded. She didn't feel sorry for Derek. He chose this path himself. Leaving the police station, she felt completely drained. Emotion, stress, running around agencies, all this fell on her in a few hours. She looked at her watch. It was already around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Time to go home and wait for Derek. Boy, would he be surprised to see her at home. The taxi took her to the apartment complex in 15 minutes. Maya went up to her floor, opened the apartment door and walked inside. Everything was the same as in the morning. Only the silence seemed oppressive. She went into the bedroom, threw the suitcase on the floor, and sat on the bed. Her phone vibrated. A text from Derek. Why aren't you answering? Call when you can. Maya smirked. Interesting. When would he come home? She didn't reply to the message. Let him be in the dark. She changed into home clothes, made herself tea, and sat in the kitchen thinking about what she would say to her husband. No need to shout, throw a tantrum. She would simply show him the recordings and say she knew everything and that his plan had failed. Around 6 o'clock in the evening, the front door slammed. Steps were heard in the hallway. Derek walked into the kitchen and froze on the threshold, seeing his wife. Maya, what are you doing here? Why didn't you leave? He was confused. His face went pale. Because I found out about your plans, she answered calmly, looking him straight in the eyes. I know you wanted to mortgage my apartment. I know about Tasha, Darnell, Finch, and the $75,000 debt. I know everything. Derek opened his mouth but found no words. He sank onto the chair opposite as if his legs gave out. From where? Who told you? He wheezed. It doesn't matter. What matters is the rest. I recorded your conversation in the cafeteria at the station. Everything. Your words, Tasha's words, and Finch's plans. I have video and audio. I've already been to a lawyer, a notary, and the police. The apartment is legally protected. Any attempt to process a lien will be blocked, and you, your sister, and Finch will have a criminal case opened against you for conspiracy to commit fraud and forgery. Mia spoke evenly, without emotion. Derek turned even paler. He clutched his head with his hands. Maya, you don't understand. It's for the family. Tasha will be killed if we don't return the money. Darnell got into debt. Loan shark squeezed him. I wanted to help. You wanted to help your sister at my expense without my knowledge. By deceit? You were going to forge my documents, mortgage my apartment where my daughter lives, and leave us on the street or with a huge debt. Maya felt anger boiling inside again. Did you think about us at all, or did you not care? I would have returned the money. I would have paid the loan. Derek tried to justify himself. With what? Your salary is $50,000. A $75,000 loan means huge monthly payments for years. You wouldn't have pulled it off, and the bank would have taken the apartment, and Zoe and I would have been left without a roof over our heads. Maya stood up and walked to the window, turning away from him. I'm filing for divorce tomorrow. Pack your things and get out of here. This apartment is mine. You don't live here anymore. Derek was silent for a long time, then asked quietly, and what will happen to Tasha now? Those are her problems and yours, but not mine. Ma cut him off. Get out, Derek. I immediately. He got up, went into the bedroom and started packing. Maya remained standing in the kitchen looking out the window. It was over. Her life with this man ended today at the station, and a new one was beginning. Without lies, without betrayal. Derek silently walked around the apartment, collecting his things. Maya heard him opening closets, taking out clothes, throwing something into a bag. She sat in the kitchen and looked out the window. Behind the glass, it was slowly getting dark. The autumn evening came early and the city was already starting to light up. Her phone vibrated. A message from Tasha. Maya, Derek just texted me that everything is canceled. Please listen to me. We really need help. Darnell is in trouble. Loan sharks are threatening. We are family. We must support each other. Don't you understand? Maya read it and put the phone aside. She wasn't going to answer. Family? What family? They wanted to rob her, leave her without housing, forge documents, commit crimes, and now they asked for understanding. No, she wouldn't participate in this madness. A few minutes later, another message arrived, more persistent. You are acting selfishly. People might get hurt because of you. Think about us. Maya felt anger flare up inside. She quickly typed a reply. Tasha, you and your husband racked up $75,000 in debts. That is your problem, not mine. Derek wanted to mortgage my apartment without my knowledge by forging documents. That is a felony. I filed a police report. I advise you to find a lawyer and don't text me anymore. She hit send and blocked Tasha's number. Derek walked out of the bedroom with a large duffel bag over his shoulder and a bag in his hands. His face was gray, gaunt. He stopped in the kitchen doorway and looked at his wife. I really have nowhere to go right now, he said quietly. Can I crash on the couch? I'll leave for my mom's tomorrow morning. Maya shook her head. No, leave now. Call your mother. She'll take you in. Or get a hotel. I don't care. But you won't stay here another night. Maya, I understand you're angry. But we lived together for 3 years. 3 years during which you ignored my daughter, didn't take part in her life, and in the end decided to destroy our future for the sake of your sister. Maya interrupted him, turning to face him. You knew what you were doing. You planned this. Prepared, waited for the moment. It wasn't a spontaneous decision under pressure. It was a conscious betrayal. Get out, Derek. Now. He stood for a few more seconds, then turned and walked to the exit. The front door slammed and Maya was left alone. She exhaled, feeling her whole body tense from held-back emotions. She wanted to cry, scream, break dishes, but she didn't allow herself to. She had to hold on, not break. She picked up the phone and called her mother. Mom, I'm home. Derek left. I kicked him out, she said, trying to sound calm. Thank God, baby. You did everything right. How are you feeling? Anxiety sounded in Lewis's voice. Tired, emotionally drained, but holding on. The apartment is safe. The police report is filed. Tomorrow, I'll start the divorce papers. Maya spoke on autopilot, listing points of the plan. Come over to us. Zoe is asking about you. Stay with your daughter. Distract yourself, suggested her mother. No, Mom. I want to be alone tonight. I need to recover. I'll come for Zoe tomorrow. Take her home. Tell her Mommy loves her very much, and we'll see each other soon. They said goodbye. Maya put the phone on the table and went into the bedroom. The room looked trashed. Closet open, things scattered, hangers lying on the floor. Derek had packed in a hurry without cleaning up after himself. She methodically began to restore order, folding her clothes back, throwing forgotten trifles of his into the trash can. In the closet on a shelf lay a box with documents. Maya opened it and took out the marriage certificate, looked at it. Date of registration, seal, signature. 3 years ago she believed this was forever, that Derek would become a support, a reliable partner. How wrong she was. The phone vibrated again. A message from an unknown number. Maya, this is Mr. Finch. We can meet and discuss the situation. I think everything can be settled peacefully without police and scandals. Call me. Maya smirked. So Derek had already warned his accomplice that the plan failed, and now the lawyer was trying to hush up the case to make a deal. She typed a reply. Finch, I recorded your conversation in the cafeteria. I have video where you discuss forging my signature. That is a criminal offense. The report is already with the police. Wait for a summons for questioning and don't try to contact me. Sent and blocked the number too. She lay on the bed without undressing and closed her eyes. Fatigue felt like a heavy weight. Today was like an endless nightmare. The station, the cafeteria, recordings, lawyer, notary, police, confrontation with Derek. All this happened in a few hours, but it seemed like an eternity had passed. She fell into a troubled sleep full of fragmentary images. Derek with documents, Tasha in tears, strangers demanding money. Maya woke up from a phone call. It was already morning. The sun was shining outside. She grabbed the receiver. It was her mother calling. Baby, how are you? I worried all night. Louise's voice was anxious. Okay, Mom, just tired getting up now. Getting myself in order, and starting the divorce paperwork. Maya sat up in bed, rubbing her face with her hands. Zoe wants to talk to you. Of course. Put her on. A small voice was heard. Mommy, when are you coming? Grandma baked cookies. We saved some for you. Maya felt her eyes fill with tears. For the sake of this voice, for the sake of this little girl, she was ready to fight the whole world. Soon, my joy, Mommy will come this evening, take you home. We'll be together, she said softly. Will Uncle Derek be there? No, honey. Uncle Derek won't live with us anymore. But that's okay. We'll be good just the two of us, right? Uh-huh. I'm actually glad. He didn't play with me anyway, Zoe answered innocently. Children always feel falseness. Maya said goodbye to her daughter, promised to come in the evening, and hung up. She got up, took a shower, got dressed, and had breakfast. Had to act further. First thing, she called the legal consultation and made an appointment with Mrs. Ross. Meeting scheduled for noon. Then she found the address of the nearest county court where she could file for divorce. At 11 a.m., she left the house and drove to the courthouse. The line was short. 20 minutes later, she was called to the window. The clerk, a young girl of about 20, listened to her and nodded. Petition for dissolution of marriage. If there are minor children or property disputes, it goes before a judge. I have a daughter from a first marriage. He didn't adopt her. No joint property. Apartment is mine. Premarital. Can we do this quickly? Clarified Maya. If the spouse agrees, yes, but we need his response. If he disagrees or evades, only through court summons, explained the clerk. Okay, I'll file unilaterally. What documents do I need? The girl gave a list. Petition, copy of ID, marriage certificate, child's birth certificate, property deeds, filing fee receipt. Maya thanked her and left. Next point, meeting with attorney Ross. She arrived at the consultation right at noon. Mrs. Ross greeted her warmly. Hello, Maya. I'm glad you came back. Tell me what happened after our meeting. Mia described all events in detail. The conversation with Derek, his departure, the message from Tasha and Finch. You did everything right, nodded Ross. Now let's handle the divorce. I'll draft the petition. We'll state the grounds. Spouse plan to commit fraudulent actions with plaintiff's property, confirmed by materials handed over to the police. That is serious grounds. The court will definitely take your side. How quickly will this happen? Asked Maya. 2 months roughly. If Derek doesn't contest, could be faster, explained the lawyer. Will you demand child support? Maya thought. So he wasn't Derek's daughter. Technically, he owed nothing. No, he has no relation to her. I'll manage myself. Good. Then everything is simplified. Give me a couple of days. I'll prepare the documents. Then we file with the county court. Ross began making notes on her pad. They discussed details. Maya left copies of all documents. The meeting took about an hour. Leaving the consultation, she felt the case moved off dead center. In the evening, she arrived at her mother's to pick up Zoe. The girl met her with a joyful squeal, threw herself on her neck. Maya pressed her daughter to herself, inhaling the smell of her hair, and felt warmth inside. Mommy, are you crying? Asked Zoe in surprise, looking at her. No, baby. Just missed you very much. Maya wiped her eyes and smiled. Louise hugged her daughter and whispered in her ear. Hang in there, baby. Everything will be fine. You are strong. They returned home together, Maya and Zoe. The apartment greeted them with silence and cleanliness. Maya put her daughter to bed, read her a story, and sat in the kitchen brewing mint tea with lemon. The phone vibrated again. A message from Derek. Maya, let's talk calmly. Maybe we can still find a solution. I don't want to destroy our family. She looked at the screen for a long time, then typed a reply. Derek, you destroyed the family when you decided to mortgage my apartment. There is nothing to talk about. Wait for the court summons for divorce and prepare for questioning at the police station for the criminal case. Sent and turned off the phone. Enough for today. Tomorrow would be a new day, new tasks, but the main thing she had already done protected herself and her daughter, and that was the most important thing. She walked into Zoe's room, looked at the sleeping girl, so small, defenseless, but she had a mother who would never let her be hurt. Maya quietly closed the door and went to sleep. Ahead was a long struggle, divorce, courts, possibly trial, but she was ready. She was strong, and she would win. A week passed since Maya kicked Derek out of the apartment. 7 days filled with paperwork, meetings with lawyers, visits to various agencies. She methodically did everything required to protect her interests and finalize the divorce. On Monday, Mrs. Ross called her and reported that the petition was ready. Maya arrived at the office, signed the document, and got the receipt for the court filing fee. That same day, she paid it at the bank and gave the copy to the lawyer. Ross promised to file the suit the next day. On Tuesday, a summons came from the police to give testimony. Maya appeared at the appointed time. The detective, the same man who took her statement, asked clarifying questions, wrote answers into the protocol. She told everything again in detail without missing anything important. We called in Derek, Lel, Tasha, and Finch for questioning. Derek and Tasha appeared, gave statements, mostly denied it, tried to wiggle out. Finch came with a lawyer. Refused to testify without him. Recounted the detective, leafing through the case folder. But we have your recordings. We are pressing charges for conspiracy to commit fraud in a large amount. Maya nodded. She felt no triumph, only cold satisfaction. Justice was being restored. What do they face? She asked. Up to several years in prison. But considering the crime wasn't completed, most likely they'll get probation or community service. Depends on the judge, explained the detective. For Finch, it's also disbarment. Maya thanked him and left the office. Outside, her mother was waiting with Zoe. Louise took her granddaughter for the time while her daughter handled business. Well? Asked her mother when they sat in a cafe nearby. Charges filed, all 3 FaceTime, answered Mia briefly, watching Zoe intently coloring in a book. Derek called me yesterday. Unexpectedly, said Louise. Asked me to influence you, persuade you to drop the police report. Maya raised her head in surprise. And what did you say? Said he is to blame for what's happening himself, that he tried to rob my daughter and granddaughter, and that I fully support you. Her mother spoke firmly without a shadow of doubt. Maya took her hand and squeezed it. Thank you, Mama. You're always on my side. On Wednesday, the court summons arrived. The first hearing on the divorce case was scheduled in 3 weeks. Maya marked the date on the calendar. Ross warned that Derek might try to drag out the process, not show up to court, file counterclaims, but even in the worst case, the divorce would happen no later than 3 months. On Thursday, Mrs. Lel, Derek's mother, called Maya. She answered cautiously. Maya, it's me. She heard the elderly woman's voice, her mother-in-law. Mia tensed up. They saw each other rarely. Relations were cool. Mrs. Lel never accepted Zoe, believing her son made a mistake getting involved with a woman with a child. Hello, Mrs. Lel. I'm listening, replied Maya dryly. I need to meet with you. Talk about Derek. It's important. The woman's voice sounded strained. Talk about what? I filed for divorce. Derek chose this path himself. Maya wasn't going to make concessions. Please give me half an hour. Let's meet in a neutral place. I won't pressure or persuade, just want to explain the situation, insisted Mrs. Lel. Maya thought. Curiosity took over. Okay. Tomorrow at 2 p.m. the cafe on Victory Square. You know it? Yes, I know. Thank you. I'll come, replied the mother-in-law with relief. The next day, Maya arrived at the cafe 15 minutes before the appointed time. Ordered coffee and sat by the window. Exactly at 2, Mrs. Lowell appeared. A woman of 61, gray-haired with a tired face and dull eyes. She looked older than her years. "Hello, Maya," she greeted quietly, sitting opposite. "Hello, I'm listening." Mia was restrained, not showing emotion. Mrs. Lell was silent, choosing words, then spoke. "I know Derek acted terribly. I'm not trying to justify him. When he told me what happened, I was in shock. But I am his mother, and I want you to understand why he did it." "Why?" asked Maya coldly. "Tasha, his younger sister. He always felt responsible for her. When their father died 15 years ago, Derek became a support for her, helped with money, solved problems, and now she ended up in a terrible situation. Darnell racked up loans, lost his job. Collectors are threatening. Derek simply didn't know how else to help," explained Mrs. Lell. And in her voice sounded a plea for understanding. "And he decided to sacrifice me and my daughter, mortgage my apartment, forge documents, leave us on the street." Maya felt anger boiling inside again. "That is called a crime, and no love for a sister justifies that. I understand you're right, but please don't ruin him. A criminal record will destroy his life. He'll lose his job, reputation. He's 37. He can fix everything if you give him a chance." Mrs. Lell looked at her pleadingly. "I am not to blame for his problems. He created this situation himself. I am not going to withdraw the statement from the police," replied Ma firmly. "Mrs. Lell, I understand it's hard for you, but your son betrayed me. He was going to destroy my life. Why should I pity him?" Her mother-in-law lowered her head and Maya saw tears flow down her cheeks. "You're right. Forgive me for taking your time," she whispered, rising from the table. Maya silently watched her leave. She felt sorry for the elderly woman, but not enough to change her decision. 2 weeks later, the first court hearing took place. Maya came with attorney Ross. Derek appeared alone without a lawyer. He looked gaunt, having lost weight. His clothes hung loosely on him. The judge read the petition and asked the defendant if he agreed with the demands. Derek was silent for a long time, then said quietly, "I agree. I do not object to the divorce." The judge nodded. "Are there claims regarding division of property?" "No, Your Honor," answered Ross. "The apartment is premarital property of the plaintiff. No other joint property. Child is from plaintiff's first marriage. Defendant did not adopt her." "Defendant, do you confirm these details?" addressed the judge to Derek. "Yes, I confirm." He spoke barely audibly. The judge gave the parties a mandatory waiting period as required by law. Derek didn't protest. Leaving the courtroom, Maya bumped into him in the corridor. He stopped looking at her. "Maya, forgive me. I was an idiot," he said quietly. She looked at him with an indifferent gaze. "Apologies changed nothing. Derek, you showed your true face, and I will never forget that." He nodded and stepped aside. Maya went outside where her mother and Zoe were waiting. A month later, their marriage was officially dissolved. Maya received the divorce decree. She put it in the box with documents and closed the lid. Chapter closed. A new one began. The criminal case against Derek, Tasha, and Finch went its course. 6 months later, the trial took place. All three were given probation for 2 years. Finch was disbarred for 3 years. Derek moved in with his mother in her 2-bedroom apartment. He had to change jobs. The commute was too far. He got a job as a manager in a small firm with half the salary. Tasha and Darnell continued to hide from creditors. They changed apartments often, now living with acquaintances. Darnell never found her permanent job. Only Tasha worked. Maya remained in her apartment with her daughter Zoe. She continued working, raising her child, building a new life. Without Derek, it became easier. Didn't have to pretend, maintain the appearance of a family, tolerate his indifference to Zoe. Miss Ada continued working as a cleaning lady in their building and at the station. Maya met her often, always said hello, thanked her. She only waved her hand. "Oh, come on, child. I just did what I had to. My conscience wouldn't let me stay silent." One day, Maya brought her a box of chocolates and a new warm blue cardigan. "Miss Ada, please take this. You saved my life. Without you, I would have lost everything," she said, handing over the gift. Miss Ada accepted the gift with gratitude. "Thank you, honey. Take care of that daughter of yours, and I'll pray for you." Months passed. Maya gradually recovered from the stress she had experienced. She learned to trust herself and her decisions again. realized she could handle everything herself without leaning on a man. Zoe grew up happily, surrounded by the love of her mom and grandma. Sometimes Maya thought about that morning at the station when Ms. Ida grabbed her hand and didn't let her get on the train. What would have happened if she had left? Derek would have processed the loan, mortgaged the apartment, and she would have returned to a ruined life, possibly lost her home, ended up on the street with a child. But she managed to protect herself, stop a crime, save her property and dignity. Life continued, and Maya was now free from lies and betrayal from a man who valued her less than his sister's problems.